to assemble these things, you had to like lug them around, you have to pick them up, you'd have to grind the inside of, like, there was just a whole different process. I had no idea what I was getting into though. So basically what would happen is, as far as like the labor process goes, it would all start with the welders. The welders would basically attach the part of the meter that actually does the measuring to solid pipe and attach to the pipe's flanges. That was a job, to assemble it, or to weld it all together. From that particular point, the meter would be taken over to the grinding station. So in order for the gas to flow effectively through the pipeline, the welds that had penetrated in through the inner diameter of the pipe needed to be grinded down. And that was one station. And there was a person that used to work at that station who was also Indigenous. His name was Ray. He was the grinder. You know, after he had finished grinding the things and honing it out, honing it is just smoothing it out even further with some oil, it would be brought over to the quality control person. And the quality control person would make sure that Ray did not grind out the weld too much, because if there was a certain tolerance down to 1/1000th of an inch that Ray needed to get that those welds to. If that passed, then he handed it over to the assemblers, and the assemblers would take, well, we would assemble it. There was a bunch of little components involved in these Daniel meters. Once we assembled it, we would give it to the hydro station, who was just one person. His name was Jamal. And Jamal would hook up a whole bunch of these pipes that 6 people were giving him, these gas meters, and he would cap them off at the end with flanges, and then he would shoot a whole bunch of water inside it, and he'd pressurize it, and we would see, he was making sure that there was no, there was no leaks. There was no leaks. Everything was good, you know. Afterward, if it passed that test as well, it was then taken over to a person named Hong, and he painted it. And that was the final step, and he would put on his little, he would prime it gray, and then somebody would take it off of his hands, I believe. Okay, yeah. I kind of forget the process afterwards. I think that he either gave it to the warehouse staff, who were a separate division of National Oil Varco, or we had our own internal deliveries that were arranged. Well, when I was working, I guess I had a little bit of a shield myself. Like, I had spent a lot of time treating copy editing as a profession. So when I looked at the words on the page, I could kind of divorce myself a little bit from the fact that this happened to an individual. I wasn't sitting in the room hearing somebody talk about that. Getting a little misty-eyed.
That's fine. That's fine. All right. We've been hearing about the abuse and how you evaluated the narratives, or how they were being evaluated. What I'm left with the impression is that there is such widespread abuse, and I can't understand it. How come there is such widespread abuse? I can understand the occasional predator getting into it, just like there would be in any school across Alberta, I suppose. But in this case, it seems so widespread that it's almost unbelievable.
Well, I guess, you know, it's when we talk about this and why things happen, I think we have to kind of think about, you know, the scenarios. You know, if predators exist in this world, you know, pedophiles exist in this world, and if you are a pedophile, I think you're probably more apt to try to put yourself in a situation that is easier than more difficult. And how do you do that? You confront, or your victim becomes a part of the population that's kind of widely disregarded, that's considered less of a citizen than others. If a pedophile does something at a public elementary school inside of a city, there's more with a population that, well, I think that there's just more of the believability factor that somebody might say something to their parents, and their parents would go do the course that you would think that parents would do. Whereas over at day schools, if somebody gets abused, they go to their parents, but their parents have also been abused, because that's what they know. Then what do? You just kind of chalk it up like your treatment as a citizen is less than a teacher who is also a citizen but is a pedophile. I think, and also, so I think that predators were attracted to these remote locations. They could do what they did, and the repercussions or the consequences were not as salient as if they had done it in elsewhere. We're talking about an exploited part of the population, and in that regard too, when we talk about like residential schools or day schools, the teachers there are not, like respectfully, I don't think that the cream of the crop rose as far as the teacher's skills. So we talk about sexual abuse, but let's consider the idea of like physical abuse for a moment. If we consider the idea of physical abuse, what usually happens? What prompts a teacher to physically abuse a child? Now I'm thinking frustration. I think that a teacher who is just frustrated. Now, what teacher is more apt to become frustrated with their pupils? A cream of the crop teacher, or maybe a teacher that didn't get top marks, to become a teacher. I think that the day schools and schools on reserves attracted less of a caliber of a teacher, and when they are confronted with little kids running amok, not listening as much, or showing disrespect or what they perceive as disrespect, how does a less competent individual react? With violence. And I think that that's why you see a lot of violence inside of day schools as well. They had told me that ALHI was starting a project called the Indigenous Labor History Project. And what it was, the reason why the project had begun is there was kind of a look back at the records or the interviews that the organization had done, and they had noticed that there was kind of a little bit of a disparity as far as the type of individuals who were contributing to these narratives of working inside of Alberta. It tended to skew towards unintentionally union people and non-Indigenous people. And they were hoping to try to balance that a little bit. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting because I think that I think that Indigenous people in general sometimes get this kind of stereotypical bad rap where Indigenous people don't work, and they just kind of, well, they rely on like the social welfare of society, and that to me wasn't my experience with my family. That to me wasn't my personal experience. Since high school, all I had done since that time was work and go to school, and most of the time at the same time. So I understood that there were a lot of individuals out there who were Indigenous people who were just kind of doing their thing, as I had been doing my thing, just trying to make it, make a living.